Welcome to Week in Horror.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
The podcast that deep dives all the films you love.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
The week they dropped in horror history.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
With your horror hosts, JL.
When a shirtless Sam Elliott with no mustache takes out an alligator with an oar, that's the kind of movie I'm looking for.
Eugene.
And we're just casually just like, yeah, so that's probably the best way to go, light someone on fire with that's the lead.
Alex.
It would not be an original lineup if I didn't have fucking technical difficulty.
Johnny O.
Now, it's not an Amityville, or wherever it's Amityville.
And Aaron.
They got manure to work with and nothing grew from it.
News, trailers, trivia, special guests, and more.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Live show every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Central at youtube.com/weekinhorror.
Welcome to prime time, bitch!
And wherever you listen to podcasts.
One by one, we will take you.
Week in Horror. Stay scared.
Okay, I'll take it.
The script says Johnny, so I didn't know if you could read it.
It does. Welcome, horror fans. It is Wednesday, 7 p.m. Central Time. That means it's time for another episode of the Week in Horror podcast. The only podcast that knows the words and maybe didn't say every single little syllable, but basically said them. And if you, dear horror fanatic, are listening to us at the top of the week, remember, we do this live every Wednesday right here on YouTube. Come hang out with us and see all the stuff our editor doesn't want you to see. This week, we are covering select horror films that released June 25th through July 1st. Thank you all so much for joining us. I am JL, and with me tonight is Eugene.
What's up, everybody?
Oh, yes, we're super professional here. That's how we get it done. I was sitting there thinking as the intro was winding down, I was kind of like, oh shit, I didn't ask him if he wanted to do the intro. I guess I'll do the intro. But then it looked like you were going to talk, and I was like, oh, and then we're just like silent. So, because we do it live here.
Things the editor doesn't want you to see.
Right. All of that stuff won't make that won't make me, like the when it's, when we do it when we put it out for podcast, no one's going to hear that shit. So if you want like all the zaniness that goes on while we're doing this live, you got to be here on YouTube. Come and join us on YouTube. All right. So, man, the month is almost over.
It is. That means like the year is almost halfway over.
Right. 2023 is almost gone.
Yeah. And you know what? Right now, it is stupid hot, and it's going to get hotter. That's what we've been dealing with here in Texas is heat. Stupid amounts of heat.
Well, up here in Oklahoma, we've been getting a lot of rain. So it's actually kind of cool. It's actually kind of balmy and cool. So it's not too bad up here, but I think you guys are getting all the heat and we're getting all the weather because Tornado Alley has kind of shifted a little bit to the east. And so tornadoes are hitting in East Texas and Northeast Texas. And they're hitting Mississippi and Arkansas. So they're hitting along there, but all that weather is pushing all the cool weather towards us here in Oklahoma. So we're actually catching a break. It hasn't gotten above, I think, 95 yet. So
see, right now it just sounds like you're bragging.
It's so true. It's so true. Okay, Sherry Tilly says in Florida too, but the difference is Eugene is in Dallas, is in DFW proper. Florida has humidity. Houston has humidity because all that shit comes off the Gulf. So, because I remember being in Florida, I vacationed there for a week, and I remember being stricken by like it was humidity. Like I think I've been to Corpus Christi one time in my life, and I never want to go back because it's Corpus Christi. No offense to Corpus Christians out there, but it's Corpus Christi anyway. So I've been once, and the humidity was gross. I went to Fort Myers, and the humidity knocked me on my ass so bad. I remember there was a moment where I drank, like we were out to eat for dinner, and I drank everyone's water. I was just like overcome with thirst. I had like no idea I could be that thirsty. I just walked in, I was like, water. I am so thirsty. And just bring the so I remember that distinctly. We call it that was the water incident in Fort Myers. So, but yeah, it's actually nice here in Oklahoma right now. Sherry Tilly says it sucks, bugs and humid AF. Yes, lots of bugs too. Absolutely. All right, but yes, the month is almost over. You know, I turned 43 this month, towards the beginning of the month. So I had my 43rd birthday. The month's almost over. We're halfway through the year, and we're only 11 episodes away from the season finale of season 4. The countdown is on, and just like, holy shit, 4 years.
4 years have been doing this, and we're coming up on our 200th episode, right?
We are.
Yeah.
We are. We hit episode 200 next month. Next month on July 19th, 200 episodes.
200 episodes. Something like what? 750 movies?
If you do 200 episodes and let's say an average of 4 per episode. So 800 roughly.
Yeah, 800. Oh, well, plus we start off with 5.
Yeah, in the beginning, if you look at that, so it's like in the beginning we did like 5. There's actually okay, so I have a little surprise for everybody. For anybody that follows us here on YouTube, I'm actually putting together all of the episodes that are missing from season 1. And I am uploading because we have our playlists on YouTube, because YouTube now allows podcasts to be available via YouTube Music. And so I am putting together all of the missing episodes from season 1. I'm putting them together with thumbnails and everything, and I'm going to be uploading them to the channel so that you'll have a complete playlist for every single season up until the current episode of Week in Horror. So you'll be able to listen to everything from the very beginning, from September 29th, 2019, all the way up to today. You can hear every single episode we've done every single week. Every week since September 29th, 2019. We have not failed to miss an episode.
And what's going to be awesome about that is, because I know we have some fans that maybe have gotten to us within the last year, and may have already talked about maybe one of your fans. Go back and look through, go, oh yeah, they did talk about this. They did talk about it, and then you get to hear what we have to say about it.
Hell yes. There were some. I gotta say, I'm embarrassed because I went back and I'm like looking at the old episodes and putting together thumbnails for them. We actually tried to do 7 movies on one fucking episode once. I had no
7.
There was an episode where we did 7 fucking movies. 7 movies. I'm like, I don't know what the hell was wrong with me. Alex chalked it up to just youthful ambition. But eventually it took us a while to get to where like maybe 4 is the best, because there were some episodes where we did 6 and 5, and one episode where we did 7 films, and then we finally got around to then there were a couple where we did 3 because we had a special guest on, so we want to make sure we had plenty of time to talk to them. But then we decided on 4. 4 was the best. 4 was the magic number, and we've been running 4 ever since. But yeah, you try to do a thumbnail like the style we do now with like 7 fucking movies on it.
It just doesn't work. Not to mention, if we kept that, say we did 7 movies, right? And now we're like 200 episodes in. Eventually we will run out of horror.
Yes, we will. I've said before, eventually we may have to drop to 3 just so we can save movies. We may have to drop to like 3 films per episode. It's just like a diminishing eventually, but we still have plenty to go. We have plenty. I have movies set all the way through the end of season 5. The end of season 5 is where things get a little hairy. So, but then again, we may have some big news coming up. It's hard to say. I don't want to speculate about season 5 or what's coming up, but largely, season 5 is going to be there if the fandom, if the people listening want there to be a season 5 and want us to continue, because the popularity has been there. You guys have enjoyed it. You guys have kept pushing us, and of course, we will continue to make the show if y'all want us to make the show. So it's pretty much how it boils down to it.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention, more horror films come out than any other genre by like a large margin. So it just may, in a couple of years, just talk about the current stuff that just comes out, because there's always some film that's coming out.
Speaking of which, I came across.
See what I did there? See what I did?
Oh, I missed it. I'm sorry.
No, the segue. There's a segue into the next thing. The
Oh,
trailer.
yeah, the trailer. Oh, okay, okay, nicely done. Very good. But you talk about like stuff coming out all the time, and I want to give a recommendation. Yeah. So I want to give a recommendation for a film that I recently came across because when I'm working out, when I'm on the treadmill, I repositioned my treadmill so I can have a better view of my television. And so I will, when I'm on the treadmill, I'll find something because Shudder and Screambox, no end of like movies, choices, selections, whatever. There's always something new coming out via Shudder, via Screambox. So I'm kind of like, what can I find? I found a 2020 film called Random Acts of Violence. It's a horror film, slasher film, that is directed by Jay Baruchel, who you'll probably remember from, the Judd Apatow crowd, Freaks and Geeks, came up with Seth Rogen and Jason Segel and Jonah Hill.
Okay.
He was the lead guy. He was the lead actor in This Is the End with James Franco and all them. Yeah. So Jay Baruchel directed it and co-wrote it. It's an adaptation off a graphic novel starring Jesse Williams from Grey's Anatomy fame and Cabin in the Woods. Jesse Williams and Jordana Brewster of Fast and Furious fame, and The Faculty, of course. So I came across this movie. It was like, it was like, okay, it's got Jesse Williams. I like Jesse. Jesse was good he was great in Grey's Anatomy, and he's good in Cabin in the Woods. So check that out. And I was like, holy shit, Jordana Brewster's in this, and fucking Jay Baruchel because he stars in it too. It's okay for an adaptation of a graphic novel directed by Jay Baruchel. Holy fucking shit. That movie is actually really goddamn good. Like surprisingly artistic for a knockdown, drag out, ultra violent slasher film, because the movie itself is a commentary on like gratuitous violence and, especially violence against women and the objectification of women in that sense in order to make money off of them in this kind of scope and pandering to the lovers of that genre. And so it's both a commentary and it's a really, really graphic slasher film. So I strongly recommend it. If you get the opportunity, anybody out there listening, go check out the movie Random Acts of Violence. Really, really interesting. It's a big recommendation for me. I just came across it at random and had to tell you all about it. Now, before we get to what we got going on, let's go ahead and make sure we get this up. There is the banner, our amazing Patreon banner, all of the amazing people who help us to make this show possible. I'm going the wrong way. There they are scrolling down. All those amazing names help us to make this show possible. And before we jump in, let's say hi to who we've got in the live chat. I've got Travis Brown. Here he is. Good to see you, buds. It's Evening Freaks and Nerds and Geeks. Fantastic to see you. Casey Cooper as well. Hail to you. Sherry Tilley is here. Good to see you, Sherry. Thanks so much for being here. And let me see. Ivy Gentry says, hello. Good to see you, Ivory. Happy Pride Month. Thank you so much, Ivy. We do appreciate that. Who else we've got? Who else is in here? Sarcasm says, "Wah, don't you like? Hey kid, don't you like clowns? Why?" fucking love Sid Haig. I love Sid Haig, and his birthday, would have been his birthday is coming up in July. But Sid Haig, one of my favorite character actors. Did you know Spider Baby is getting there's a remake of Spider Baby? I'm friends on social media with the dude who directed it. And he just finished the rough cut of Spider Baby, which was an early Sid Haig film. And he's currently working. I've seen some stills from the cut. It looks fantastic. It's not black and white, but it looks really, really good. So I'm really curious.
Okay.
Yeah. So that should be coming out here pretty soon. Good to see you, Sarcasm. Who else we got? I see J-Verse is here. Says click on right when it started. Good to see you, J-Verse. Thanks so much for being here. Gavlar Hand of Zod as well. Says good evening, all. Good to see you, Gavlar. Wrote it no last name. Gabba Gabba to you. Says it must be the apocalypse. I received an alert on YouTube. I heard YouTube is kind of hit or miss when it comes to notifications. But good to see you, Rodent. Sarcasm says I once made the mistake of asking God for more patience. I have been waiting ever since. Yep, he'll do that. Charlie Welch, good to see you. Only man on the internet you never make a bet with. Says, folksies, always good to have you. Welchy, Paracord Princess as well. Says, come on, JL. They had you at shirtless Sam Elliott. Me too. They absolutely did. They had me at shirtless Sam Elliott. I fucking love that scene because he's so legendary. It's funny because Sam Elliott is kind of a scrawny guy. He's tall, but he's thin. He's wiry. Okay, he's not like, like, I'm an action star. And that fucker leapt out of that canoe and beat the living shit out of that alligator with that oar, and it was fucking legendary. It was legendary. Like with no hesitation.
The thing about Sam Elliott is this: Sam Elliott is not like the Arnold Schwarzenegger like action star. Sam Elliott's like a man's man, like where he's like, you picture him as like a mountain man in the woods, like a guy who, like, not only did he leap out of that canoe, he built that canoe. Like, that's the kind of man Sam Elliott is.
Well, if you wait a second, I gotta whittle us a canoe here right quick. And have you seen The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot?
No, we've talked about it on the podcast before, but I haven't seen it yet.
You have to fucking watch that movie. It is amazing. He is brilliant in this. Think of the title: The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot. Where do you go with that?
That's life goals. Like, you've accomplished more than what most people will in their entire lives.
I saw it once. I know. I saw it one time and immediately went out and bought a copy for my personal collection. Physical media. I do still keep physical media, but only for my personal stuff. Like I want to watch this because I don't want to go hunting for it anywhere. And I had to go out and buy that. I think I bought it on fucking Blu-ray. I never buy Blu-ray, but the movie looks amazing. It is amazing, and yes, there's a fucking Bigfoot in it. It's so fucking good. It is so fucking good. So yes. Who else we got here? Yes, Charlie Wolf says the storms are getting out of hand. They are getting out of hand, but they keep sideswiping us. We have yet to see it. Denova28 is here. Good to see you. Denova says hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here as well. And I saw another name in there. Where'd it go? Oh, Sir Cap says between Tubi and Shudder, you will always have B through Z for content. Hell fucking yes. You absolutely will. Christo Kiernium is here. Good to see you. Says, hey, JL Eugene. Hi, everyone. Good to see you. Christo, thanks for hanging out. Tony Regime as well with the obligatory ghost says, hello, everyone. Good to see you, Tony. Thanks so much for being here. Travis Brown says, Sam Elliott as the narrator in The Big Lebowski and caretaker in Ghost Rider. So, yes, as the cowboy in Big Lebowski, he was amazing. Just a good, nice little role. Obviously, Tombstone is going to be, come on, Virgil Earp.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Okay, I wouldn't fuck with him at all. Oh man, he was amazing. They were all amazing in that one. They were all great. Yeah, the quintessential Western.
So you have to actually check out a film he did. So he was in the movie Gettysburg that came out, I think, 92 or 93, where he plays a Union cavalry general. And like, he's the kind of guy you're like, I'll write the hell for him.
Fuck
just straight up, like, first day. And he's just like, this is, and he goes on this whole like monologue about like everything that's going on. And it's just like, I feel so inspired afterwards. Like, that's what he does.
Genova says Roadhouse. Enough said. Right?
Yeah.
I'll agree with that. I also say he was really good in The Ranch. He really got to flex his comedic chops in The Ranch. He was good in A Star Is Born. Manly enough. He's old, but he's so manly. I didn't mind that Bradley Cooper punched him out. I was like, he could take it. The guy's like fucking 80. He's like, nah, he can take it. He's good. It's like, he's solid.
Bradley Cooper's like, do you want a stunt double?
It's like, nah.
Do you want to crash pad? No.
I love Sam Elliott, and he was funny as fucking Parks and Rec when he meets Ron Swanson when he finds out he's like a vegan and all that shit. That was fucking brilliant. I loved him in Parks and Rec. Sam Elliott is a national treasure and must be protected at all costs. He absolutely must be. All right, so we are all caught up. I see people are still trickling in, so happy to see everyone. Good to see everybody hanging out here tonight. So first and foremost, before we dive into tonight's selections, as most people know, or some of you in the live chat, or people listening later may not know, is that my kind of like history in the entertainment industry started out much like everybody else's, doing some extra work here and there, went to film school, and also did a lot of theater. So, but I've been doing theater since I was in elementary school. I love theater, did it all through, Did it through elementary school, junior high, high school, all the way up till college. I love the theater. I've worked it professionally, and my first love will always be the theater because there's something about stage work that is so different from film work, and I will always have this respect for it. I have several plays that I love contemporary, I love classic pieces, but nonetheless, I will always have a deep and abiding love for the stage, and that's why this trailer caught my eye. Because I saw a trailer that just dropped I think yesterday, or maybe the day before, called The Woman Under the Stage, which is a horror film centered around the theater. And you don't often, it's been a long time since I've seen a horror film. I think the last horror film I saw that was centered around like the actual like theater, like actors on stage, was The Gallows. And The Gallows and the really, really terrible sequel, Gallows 2. But this one looks really interesting, and I want to share it with y'all tonight. Check out this trailer for The Woman Under the Stage.
What sacrifices do you think main stage actors would make to give a great performance on stage? Acting, as I understand it, takes an enormous toll on the mind, body, and spirit. And in this production, in your role in particular, I'm going to push the boundaries of what your mind, body, and spirit can take. Are you listening? Whatever actress I cast in this role will run right into the burning building.
I think I'm your girl.
You think?
I'm your girl.
My name is Terrence Duran. This play has never been performed in the 15 years since it was written. The moment we close this play, we're going to burn every single script, and the play will never, ever be performed again. You want to be a part of this? You'll live in this theater, rehearse in this theater for the duration of the production until the moment we close. No exit allowed.
Is it safe?
It's 3 actors in a set piece. How dangerous can it be?
You're going to live in this theater for 2 months in a dressing room with people you don't know, in a production you know nothing about.
The last girl that played Penny in Scorning Roses, she died.
I thought it could only be performed once.
There wasn't another production. She died during rehearsals.
Goddess of theater and wine, may her blood run quick and cold to numb the pain of my works. That I take my own life to offer for payment.
You want to see your theatrical career take off, or it can die.
Open the fucking door!
Fear motivates people.
I don't know what's real anymore. I keep having these nightmares. Somebody please!
She's given us everything we have.
The bell invites me.
The bell invites me.
Whitney! I made my sacrifices!
Am I here to die?
No, Whitney. You're here to live. Longer than you could possibly imagine.
So yes, that is the trailer for The Woman Under the Stage.
I have mixed reactions.
Okay.
Mixed feelings for this. So there's some aspects of this that do look interesting. I think it's an interesting concept. And you're right, it's something in terms of stage wise you don't really see very often. If anything, it's maybe a snippet of something weird on stage, like an interview with the vampire, but you don't really see anything full, because you mentioned the Gallows, and I was like, other than the Gallows, I think the last one I remember is like Black Swan, where it focuses like on a production. There's just not that.
Oh
many.
yeah, that being the ballet though, which
well, I'm just saying, just stay like a stage
Oh,
scene,
yeah.
where there's like ballet, dance, or like a play. So it's a really interesting concept. Concerned a little bit about the execution. There are a couple of shots in there I was kind of and there's some audio in there that's kind of like it could be a case of a good story with maybe subpar execution, but I'm still down to watch it regardless.
It looks interesting, and I did get the sensation that trailer was dropped in order to pique interest, and that it might be an early trailer. It looks like it needs a little bit of correction here and there, some things that may get tidied up in the final cut of the actual film, because you can cut a trailer off a rough cut, and then when not all the work is done, just so you can get word out there and start spreading word. Because at the end, obviously, there's a hashtag. You can follow that hashtag. It's called the Bell Invites Me. Hashtag the Bell Invites Me. And I don't know, so I don't know what it's going to look like in the end, but I'm always excited with, especially with with the legends of the theater around, and I love I grew up with legends in the theater, the things that I knew about it, because I grew up in San Diego, and we have the Balboa Playhouse is one of the legendary ones in the nation, and every theater's got its story. As a matter of fact, here in Oklahoma, my wife Angela was a regular performer at the Ponca, which is one of the oldest theaters in Oklahoma, and that one is rife with stories of ghosts and all kinds of legends and stuff. And I love the idea that there seems to be some pagan overtones to the film. So I'm really curious. I liked, and I also you got to admit, they didn't give anything away. All I have are questions. So that was a nice change of pace.
Yeah, so I will say that's why the thing that piques me is the premise, because something of how much do people sacrifice for art is always a subject that's intrigued me, especially when you think we come from a creative background. Like, what are you willing to go through? So that right there is a very interesting premise. And then you make a good point that the trailer doesn't give anything away. Whereas, as we talk most times, you see these trailers like, wow, so I just need to see the last 5 minutes of the film and I caught up. And this gives me nothing. So at the very least, it's intriguing.
I'm looking forward to it. And so, I mean, like I said, there's no official release date yet, but the trailer is of the woman under the stage. So I'm really curious. More information as that one comes out. Obviously, nothing's been released yet. Just the trailer's dropped. So, and I told the director, who I'm connected with via social media, I told him we're going to blast this thing on the show and get everybody's opinion. So for those in the live chat, and of course, for those who have seen it after the show, if you like what you see in the trailer, let us know down in the comments. Let us know what you think of the trailer for The Woman Under the Stage, or hit us up at weekinhorror@gmail.com, or go and check them out. You can check out the hashtag, The Bell Invites Me. Go check that out and let us know what you think. All right, but we have some solid movies to talk about. Well, we have a few solid films, and I think one kind of iffy, but no terrible ones. No terrible ones, but we do have to. We're going to start off with a good one. Eugene, what do we have up first? Kick us off.
So first we have Phantom of the Opera, which was released June 25th, 1962. Roll it.
Come if you dare within these walls. On stage is color, beauty, and light. But in the shadows lurks a monstrous evil.
Young woman, you must come with me.
Terror haunts these dusty corridors. Murder waits its call in the dressing rooms. And on cue, death makes his entrance. They have no right to love and happiness, for this beautiful young girl is tangled in a web of terror.
He came out the water like Jason.
The Phantom of the Opera. The hideous echo of a night of agony and horror. A night that must be avenged even from beyond the grave.
So that was Phantom of the Opera from 1962, directed by Terence Fisher, starring Herbert Lom, Heather Spears, Edward Del Souza, and Michael Goth. And basically what it is you have the composer and the backer are trying to find a new lead for an upcoming play after a gruesome murder. And their new prospect, Christine, disappears. So they have to figure out what's going on. And shit gets real.
Well, yeah, it gets real for the 60s. It absolutely does.
Yeah.
So, for those familiar with it, I know that virtually everybody who listens to this is really, really familiar with the Phantom of the Opera story. But I kind of dove into this because the story is old. It's been adapted so many times. It's one of the classic Universal monsters. And I really, really wanted to. So for this particular one, because we've already covered the 1943 one with Claude Rains, the one that Universal put out that really pumped up the operatic spectacle of the film. They really wanted to push the musical aspect of it, and then Claude Rains coming in and being the badass Phantom that he was with the interesting blue mask. But this one was decidedly different. Obviously, we have Phantom of the Opera with Hammer horror sensibilities. So the tale behind this. So what Hammer did is they toned down the operatic aspect of the film, and they ramped up the kind of violence and the luridness and the kind of all the Hammer stuff that we've come to love over the years, like the sequence of the when the little imp guy stabs the guy in the eye, and he's like full-fledged, that was the kind of shit Hammer was known for. But it's interesting because at the time, Universal was trying to do another adaptation, right? But things were looking down for Universal at the time. So they were kind of like in the dumps. And so they were looking to kind of like rehash some of their old content. And Hammer had some movies that they had to make, but they didn't have the money to do it. So they'd had some hits, but they were kind of like, damn it, we got these movies we want to do, but we don't really have the funds to do it. It was a marriage made in horror history because Universal signed a deal with Hammer Horror in order to get their old stuff redone under the Hammer brand. So they allowed Hammer to play with their stuff and then turn around. And it was like a 5-picture deal. And part of that 5-picture deal allowed Hammer to produce the movies that they needed to produce. And so everybody was happy. All the movies got made. And Phantom of the Opera was the one that kicked this whole thing off. So this was when Hammer and Universal directly worked together in order to make this thing happen. So it's really, really interesting, the kind of like the history behind this, because Hammer, and the one thing I found out most about this, anybody out there in the live chat, so you're familiar, I know, Eugene, you're familiar with, we talked about it before, Johann Sebastian Bach's Toccata. It was at the Toccata and Fugue in D minor. The da-da-da, da-da-da-da, yes. Yeah. So that song, and we all pretty much, associate that with the character of the Phantom. This is the movie, the Hammer version of that made that popular. There's the reason why we associate Bach with the Phantom is because that was the song that the Phantom was playing. It was the first time it ever happened. Beforehand, in the 1943 version, he was playing, in the 1943 version, he was playing something. He's playing something else, but I remember in the Lon Chaney one, he was playing Faust. So this is the first time we got the Toccata and Fugue in D minor, which is cemented in horror history. But it's really, really cool. I love what Hammer brought to this, and they revitalized it, the idea of it, because it's no more musical. There is a musical, there is some song singing towards the end in the big climax, but ultimately, it's not what Universal put out beforehand with Claude Rains. This is the reason they got it is because of the success of Dracula, because of their reinvention of Dracula in the 1958 Dracula that they put out, and that allowed them to do this one. And so I love what Hammer brought to it as far as the way they shot, the way they brought that way, everything they established themselves with directing Christopher Lee and Dracula, they brought to this one to direct Herbert Lom as the Phantom.
Yeah, so I'm glad they kind of went back to the horror element. I've always liked horror versions of Phantom of the Opera more than musicals, just because, personally, I've never been a huge fan of musicals. Typically, a lot of times, songs will take me out of a scene, especially when you have a 4-minute song that could be done in like one line of dialogue.
Right.
You know, where it's like, he opened the door the door is open. I was like, I get it. I do. I get it. So that was actually something that I greatly appreciated. And not to mention, can we talk about the production value? Like, this is incredible art direction, incredible color palette, and just all throughout, it's just stunning just to look at.
I really, really enjoyed every single section was really, really nice, and including the bowel area of where the Phantom hangs out, where the Phantom hides out, his kind of like underground lair that essentially they created the set in a giant cistern which is actually underneath the theater. So underneath that was this giant open cistern, and they built the Phantom set within there, and that's where all the water is coming from. Was all natural. So they're basically kind of working in a live working cistern at the time. And so the way they brought everything in, the way they colored it, the way every single area, whether you're in the theater, you're outside the theater, or you are down in the bowels of the Phantom's hideout, everywhere is its own kind of character, which I really enjoyed. A lot of attention was paid to it. The color selection was amazing. The color palette they used was so markedly different from the 43 version with Rains, because that one was more pastels, more colorful. It's about the theater. It's bright. It's showy. It's about performance. Whereas this one was about the horror. It's dark. It's dank. It's shadowy. And I loved how they played with that. Not to mention the use of angles, the way they, the cinematography in this was so much more intuitive than in the previous one, especially during the flashback sequence. Not to mention the whole sequence of Herbert Lom's character going into like drunk and going into the news type place and tearing the whole fucking place apart. I loved that sequence. And then he winds up getting burned, like burned up, said in the Claude Rains when he had acid, he had like printer's acid thrown in his face. And this one, he just gets burnt because he winds up like dropping, like he winds up accidentally setting fire to the place, and the whole place goes up and burns his face and horribly mutilates him. And then how they portrayed him looking when the mask comes off and he's finally revealed. I thought that was really, really nice. And for those who don't know, Herbert Lom, I found out, this is so fucking cool. He was the doctor. He was the psychiatrist in The Dead Zone with Christopher Walken, the guy who he reunited with his sister. Yes. I was like, loly shit, that's fucking cool. So yeah, he played the doctor in that Johnny ends up reuniting with his sister after they lost each other after the war. I thought that was really cool. He's a fantastic character actor, and he brought a level of pathos to this one that I thought Claude Rains kind of missed. I think it was a maturity. It was a maturity to the performance, but that may have been because of the focus, because of Fisher's focus. Fisher was renowned in Hammer horror, and he knew how to bring those elements out, especially working with the likes of, Price and Lee and Cushing. He knew how to bring that out. He loved those classically trained actors who could bring that real level of gravitas, whereas Rains was more of a kind of a film-born kind of actor. He had his classical training, but really more, he was a showman, whereas the others were more like, your classic actor. And so he was able to bring that out in Loam. And I loved Fisher's, you can see his fingerprints all over this thing. I loved where he gets his ideas and his inspirations. Really smartly done. So, but Wrote It No Less Name said in the chat, like, speaking of theaters, and yes, I did some diving. So this is kind of my interesting rant on this. So Phantom of the Opera is actually based on, was written, and I want to make sure I get his name right because the dude is French. Gaston Leroux. Gaston Leroux wrote Le Fantôme de l'Opera, or the Opera Ghost, in 1910. So it is serialized in newspapers and then eventually collected in a volume. So LaRoe wrote the opera Ghost, and then that was adapted into a film, The Phantom of the Opera, starring Lon Chaney, which gave us the legendary, the face reveal and Lon Chaney's face. Horror history was made. The original Phantom of the Opera was in the serialized version. They're like what LaRoe wrote was based on an actual legend of the Paris Opera, that apparently it was haunted by a ghost because a production had utilized the skeleton of a ballerina that had died, used her skeleton as a prop in a production. And that led to the idea that the theater was haunted. That was the Phantom. They're really all the stories that you hear about haunted theaters. And that's where LaRue got the idea. And so he wrote this. Everybody loved it. It was grisly. It was dark. It was graphic. It was like perfect, with the French Renaissance and the French and the Germans coming up with all this fantastic, this kind of like exploration of the macabre at the time. And so Universal jumped on it and they produced The Phantom of the Opera with Lon Chaney, and history is made. But changes have been made over time. And so this thing has been adapted so many times. So you've got the Lon Chaney one. You've got the Claude Rains one. You've got the Herbert Lom one. Okay. And I found out everybody's making little changes here and there. Changes to the Phantom's backstory, changes to the relationship to Christine, changes to what's going on in the climax, to all kinds of stuff. The original story is he was disfigured because he was born that way. He was born monstrous, and then eventually made his way to the bottom of the theater and became this, this decrepit creature, and ends up falling in love with Christine Daae from afar. Deaths and murders and hangings take place, yada, yada. We know the original story. But you see it's changed. He was disfigured in an accident. He's getting revenge. He's angry because of revenge, because somebody stole his work. None of those are the original Phantom. If you want a movie that gives you an adaptation from the original source material, you have to go to 1988. The Phantom of the Opera starring, I kid you fucking not, Robert Englund. Robert Englund's freaking that right there is the most authentic. It took the most from the source material. Born deformed, abused, made his way to the bottom of the opera, so on and so forth. And then it goes on from there. The lust for Christine. It was super gory, super gross. He would stitch the character would stitch the mask into his own face, to hide his deformity.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if you want an authentic take, that's the one you want to go with. And then you have the Gerard Butler, the musical with Gerard Butler and Emmy Rossum and Patrick Wilson of Insidious fame, that took the origin story from the original LaRoe, and then took the elements from the Claude Rains one and combined those together, because that's what Andrew Lloyd Webber had done when he did his 1986 musical. So we can see the story has changed time and time again, over and over and over again. Hammer, I think, is the one that brought it back to the Lon Chaney style, and kind of brought it in, but still kept it. It's 1960s, there was, they can't go too far. And that set the tone for when the 80s came around. We can have Robert Englund come in and do something really graphic that's really, true to the source material. And so, but then Weber got a hold of it. And now we have the musical, the music of the night, that stuff. But
yeah.
But the story is fascinating behind everything that went behind this. And I love it because there was an anecdote I heard. Herbert Lom, the producers. Do you remember? Okay, in the sequence when he gets burned in the fire, and he staggers out into the street. The cop is there and he's like, "Woo, what's going on? What's happening?" and then Lom grabs his face. And Tony Regime brings up Herbert Lom going insane in the Pink Panther films was brilliant. Absolutely. He's so fantastic. There's a sequence when he's like, and he beats his head against this pillar. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When they were going to shoot it, they didn't have a fake pillar. They had a stone pillar. And the producers wanted him to do that, and beat his head against it. For real. And he was like, "No, I'm not beating my head against a stone pillar for you." And so they had to scramble to make a rubber one so that he could beat his head against it. And apparently they got mad at him, and it actually shut down production for a short amount of time because it's like, okay, I'll go the distance, but I'm not beating my head against a damn stonework to make your fucking movie. And actually held up production so they could build a rubber deal so that he could freak out and bang his head against it before he dives into the sewer and gets washed down to the cistern. So really, really cool stuff.
I don't blame him for that.
Not at all.
I really don't blame him. When the director is like, I want you to beat your head against a stone pillar as hard as you can for multiple takes. He's like, no.
I'd heard the story, and then I was sitting there watching it. When the sequence came up, I was like, oh, that's the scene they're talking about. Because he does. He hauls off, and he's like, blah, blah, like my face is burning off. And he slams his face just against this. I was like, oh. I was like, damn, dude, they really have you beat your head and face against a stone, like stonework? It's like, what the shit? Producer's like, man, we got to make money. Can't be spending money to make a movie. What the fuck are you talking about? Just beat your head against the side of a building. No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good, Chief. So, and Sarcasm says the England version, the England version was always my favorite. The England one is actually really, really good. Considering when you consider the source material, it's really, really good. You can see that Robert Englund really wanted to stay true to that, true to the idea of what LaRoe did. Which, if you watch that, I think watching the Robert Englund Phantom of the Opera gives you a real sense of that man's commitment to a commitment to art in and of itself, commitment to the source material, to LaRue's original idea, to the ideologies at the time. He took all of that to inform his performance. I thought it was really, really strong. Just a good example of how talented Robert Englund actually is. But as far as this one goes, I love Phantom of the Opera. This one, the Hammer horror one, because one, it's Hammer, and it really set the tone going forward. I would think that the Phantom of that Hammer is what saved Universal's classic monsters. That Universal was on the decline, was going through a decline at the time. If it wasn't for Hammer, I don't know if we would still have these characters, or I don't know that these characters would be as popular, because Hammer revitalized them with the kind of like with the gore and the graphic nature and the titillating and just like, oh, the sex and violence and shit. Hammer brought that and said, let's reimagine this up. Let's get Christopher Lee in there, all fucking bug eyes and shit and big fucking fangs, and have him go to town. Let's get some really dark stuff. And people loved it. They ate that shit up. I mean, Hammer revitalized the Italian cinema. So,
because you think of like the technological advancements from when you look from the 30s to the Universal monsters to now we're in the 60s. One of the biggest things is color, and then you're getting better sound quality. So it's like, well, let's go back and let's revisit these things because we just have the technology to do them better. And that's just hands down. If you ask somebody, would you rather watch a movie from the 60s or the movie from the 30s? Most people are probably going to say the 60s, hoping that it's in color. The same situation back then. So it just helped kind of keep these going because even when you look at things like Frankenstein, we picture the 1930s, like the 31, 32 version of Frankenstein. Yeah, Boris Karloff with the bolts right here.
And the head, the way his jaws kind of kicked off.
Yeah, that's a Frankenstein. But regardless of all the Frankenstein movies that have come up since then, that's the Frankenstein that we always go back to, right? But
you mean you don't envision the big lumbering blue oaf from Van Helsing?
I mean, I do, but
sometimes I see Robert De Niro. It's kind of like, because he was a pretty good Frankenstein, but Rory, what was it? Penny Dreadful. That Frankenstein was pretty amazing. But yeah, the classic one is the Boris Karloff. Just the way he was built was just he was built wrong. Like his manner of moving, everything was like, oh, that has all the hallmarks of someone who's not put together right.
So you think you have these creations from the Universal monsters, but really you're right. Hammer Horror was the one that reinforced it, because now we revisit Frankenstein, now we revisit Dracula, now we revisited the Mummy. We have these others that have come in and also on top of that, you keep in mind you have a newer generation. That's the thing, a newer generation from the 30s to the 60s, a new group of people that can go and get reinvested in it.
Right. Excellent stuff. I really enjoyed this one. I dig it. I love the effect that Hammer had on the Universal Horror monsters. That if it wasn't for them, the movie like this goes, even though it didn't do well commercially, like at the box office, people were kind of like taken aback by it because they'd already been kind of, the Claude Rains film was so huge. People are expecting the kind of musical aspect of it. But in this one, Hammer brought it back to its kind of original Lon Chaney sensibilities. And while Lon Chaney will always be, the biggest, the one that set the bar, I love how Hammer brought it back to its roots and then allowed for the people going forward, for filmmakers going forward, to really hone it back in. And yeah, sure, the Broadway show is magnificent. I mean, as a tenor, I really love the Phantom songs because the Phantom's in my range. So in musical theater, I auditioned with Music of the Night. So that's just me because I can sing it. but nonetheless, I love the classic stuff. I love how Herbert Loam brought this. He brought like you said, that pathos, that gravitas, that really classic actor mentality to it. And even though it was a little bit more sympathetic than I think the Phantom should be, I like that it was less sympathetic than the Claude Rains one. I like that. I like that it was dark. This dude is already checked out. He knows his time is in. He just wants kind of this one thing. And the fact that, that final sequence when he's up there in the office, he finally reveals himself to Michael Goff, to Alfred from the Batman movies. He finally reveals himself. And then we don't know what happens. The fucker just gets trounced out of continuity. I don't know. We didn't know what
That's done. That's it.
Just done. He's like, oh, I'm scared. And I guess that's all we need from him. He's just terrified to death. So I fucking love it. But the real world inspirations, how this beautiful story has evolved over time, all the different players that have come along to play a titular character, such a fantastic and fascinating history behind this one little guy, this one this iconic monster who started out as just a serialized story in a French newspaper back in 1910, which I think is so fucking cool,
Well, actually, I want to ask the audience. We've discussed a lot of different versions of Phantom of the Opera. To you, what do you think is the best version of the Phantom Opera? You got the Lon Chaney, we got Robert Englund that we were talking about,
Claude Rains,
you got
Gerard Butler.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Gerard Butler. So definitely let us know in the comments below or shoot us an email at weekinhorror@gmail.com.
Ooh, who's shit. Damn it, because I really like Herbert Loam. I'm still going to have to give it to Lon Chaney.
I was thinking Lon Chaney.
Lon Chaney is still the Phantom. Because that whole sequence playing there, and then she rips the mask off and is looking straight in there. Did you know that the theater recommended men bring smelling salts for their wives during that movie to watch performances because it was so shocking that women were fainting? So we recommend that you bring some smelling salts for. Apparently fainting was a fucking thing. It happened a lot. So it's by the way, gentlemen, bring your smelling salts because your wife may get the vapors.
It's probably one of those things where every year some movies this is the scariest movie to come out this year. Most people can't sit all the way through, and then you watch it and you're like, really?
Well, we're so horribly desensitized that I can't remember what the last one that got me was Dead Alive, but that was more of a visceral thing. Oh, this is so gross. I almost puked. But as far as we're just desensitized. We're so in it. They're gonna bury us in this trench.
Yeah, they just really are. You're not gonna shock us anymore.
All right. So definitely. Definitely let us know, weekinhorror@gmail.com, or down in the comments below who you think the best Phantom was, the best version of the Phantom. Who did it best. I really want to hear people's opinions on that.
Yeah, I'm really curious because there's so many different versions of it. But we got some other movies coming up. JL, what do we got next?
All right. So up next, released June 26th, 2021. This is a fairly recent one. So the spoiler moratorium is in effect. We have the anthology film Scare Us. Let's check out this trailer. Nemo 813. Oh, and by the way, good to see you, Nemo 813. Good to see you. I saw him earlier. H. Jasper E. Thanks so much for popping in. And of course, Ordinary Jeff. Always fantastic to have you. And Aaron Reese is holding down the chat. Says Universal tore down the Cheney Phantom of the Opera set to build the Harry Potter attraction. Fuck that Four Eyes weeb. This is true because it was interesting because the Cheney one was kept and repurposed for the Claude Rains one. That was a legendary set that they did not, that they obviously kept for a while. I think it was lot 40. I think it was lot 43, if I remember correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong in that, but they did eventually tear that down so they could do the Harry Potter attraction, which is a goddamn travesty. All right, let's check out this trailer for the horror anthology film Scare Us.
Did you hear? There were 2 more murders last night. Do you realize what this means?
Only 2.
4 murders in our town in less than 2 months. He's back. Cutthroat.
Please don't start this again. I'm really not in the mood. I don't want to hear it. And neither is anyone else who's coming tonight. Scare me. That was this week's assignment. You were all supposed to write a short story that is not only scary, but very personal to you.
Hey, man, what's going on? Look, kid, if you don't leave, you're gonna die. Hey, man, what's out there?
Tonight's theme might seem a little macabre. However, we're all writers, and we gotta stay true to our work.
You have been given a wonderful purpose. They say the apple does not fall far from the tree. They never do ask what happens to the apple after it hits the ground below.
Is everything all right with Dad?
I'm gonna need you both to ease off the questions for now, okay?
Were you in my office? Was that you?
It's okay, sweetie. I'm gonna get you out. I have to go find something to break you out of this box.
Where you headed? Well, as far out as you can take me, man. Just want to get out of the city. Hello? Oh, Jesus Christ.
That's funny, I thought I locked up. We're closed for this evening. Hello?
We are not born for ourselves alone.
I think something's happening.
Sarah? Are you alright?
Leave this place.
Father.
Go away.
Better get out of here, kid.
I mean, why would you even come if you weren't going to share?
Hey, my writing warriors. Who's ready to get started? This is a little dark, you know?
Don't be afraid, darling.
I can't wait to see
Should I be worried?
All right, we have the horror anthology Scare Us, directed, multiple directors by Carl Jensen IV, Ryan Henry Johnson, Ryan Kohlberg, Charlotte Lilt, Tom J. McCoy, and Jordan Pillar, written by Will Hirsch, Carl Jensen IV, Ryan Henry Johnson, Ryan Kohlberg, Tom J. McCoy, Jordan Pillar, starring Tom Sandoval, Charlotte Lilt, Michael Palermo, Michael C. Alvarez, Ethan Drew, Jason Weichert, and William Kenny, and Richard Lippert as the priest. So the film is an anthology film, several stories connected by a collective, I would say a group of writers who have been brought in to share their stories, their scary stories they've written, backdropped against a serial killer apparently prowling the streets of the town that they live in. but all may not be what it seems. So an interesting little anthology, I have to say. We are under the kind of the moratorium, but it's problematic. So I will say this. The film all in all is intriguing, but there is a real, but I felt like something was missing. And I think what it was that this was an instance when not all of the writers and directors, not all the combos were of equal level, because there was some serious disbalance here. But I found that each one of the shorts, something worked in each one. There was a good, strong thing that worked in each one. Cinematography here, characterization here, something solid, direction and act, however it goes. But unfortunately, I think it was just too disbalanced.
I see. I agree with that also, because not to mention, out of the 4 stories that it goes over, the first one is the weakest one. The one that takes place in the storage unit.
Yeah.
Like that one, I was kind of like, it felt like a cheap location. The lighting itself wasn't great in it, and it seemed very kind of like just very straightforward, kind of run of the mill. And a moment that I thought could have been more creepy. And when you have, like I said, I'm not going to give too much away, but when you have like the creatures and all this other kind of stuff, they could have leaned into the bear from Annihilation, where you remember that bear came in and it's like, help me in the background.
Yes.
Like if you had, I'll say it's creatures. If you have like the creatures kind of acting like that could have been an interesting twist, like leaning more kind of towards that. But it's kind of, once the creatures kind of like reveal themselves, they just do creature things, and so it kind of like falls flat.
That was the odd kicker from a narrative perspective as a writer. I mean, that the kind of story that's told in the first one has been done, and I understand that it is ostensibly it's a writer that's telling a story that they have written, but from a filmmaking standpoint, I thought it was the weakest of the bunch. I like the idea of where I was immediately going when I was watching it was, obviously we have a situation where there is something untoward being stored in the storage facility by a priest who is like, okay, when you see a priest dumping a steamer trunk that is chained up into a storage unit, when you see that happen and then you hear sing-songy little girl voices coming out of it, don't open it.
Leave it alone.
Leave it the fuck alone.
Leave it alone.
Okay? You're in an isolated, claustrophobic environment, and there are sing-songy little girl voices saying, let me out of the chained steamer trunk that the priest pushed in there and then looked like he died in the hallway. No, you don't open that. If they had stuck with that and just gone with that effect, like the thing in the box, like what is the thing in the box? They could have played that much differently. There could have been, there's obviously something in there. What potentially is it? There's a lot more. That sandbox is bigger as both a writer and an actor. Instead of just being, oh, I opened the box and, open box leaves the
now you have
monster
these
out.
things.
Exactly.
Because the thing is, it gets 100% predictable after that. Like,
exactly.
Like that. And you're right. Going at a standpoint, and if it ended on just maybe she opens it and then I cut the black or something, that could have been interesting, because then people can discuss what was in the box.
What was in it.
And
as a writer, you can litter little clues as to what it may or may not be, and maybe some little red herrings here and there throughout as you have this woman. And I would say, as an antagonist, the priest makes a better antagonist, because now you have a conflict and you have an obstacle. The conflict is there's something in the box that wants to be let out. It sounds like a little girl. Is it a little girl? We're not sure. Then you have the conflict, which is the priest who is trying to stop you from doing that. So you have a very human conflict, and you have your obstacle. I thought that it was like I said, it was the weakest of the bunch. There's a reason for that. I think there were easy writing choices and something very, very cliche. Tony Regime has a question though. Says, random question: if someone was buried alive, would they be terrified? But yes.
And so that was something that was kind of disappointing, was the fact that it led off with that. I think it was kind of buried in the middle. Then it kind of would just kind of get lost in the shuffle, because then when it goes to the second story where the boy is talking, the second story was the best out of all 4 of them.
I felt as well that it really, which is kind of like both good and because it was like, oh, we're really solid, but then you get kind of a letdown at the okay. So wait, I'll say. So the first one was the first one was the one in the storage facility. The second one was
that's the untethered one where you have the boy and they bring the dad home.
Okay, yeah, that's right. And then you had the one with the guy at the remote gas station, and then you had the girl
going to the house,
going to the house, the Hereditary style version. What I say Hereditary because that's all I could think of, because that's the vibe you get from it. It's like, oh, this is so like
it's straight Hereditary. And the thing is with the fourth story, like the fourth story was executed well. It was shot well, it was acted well, it had some nice moments, but you're right, it is like just straight like I saw Hereditary and I want to react. And I mean it's great for what it is. And as a short can hold up pretty well on its own, but leading into the second story was the one that was like, oh, the editing on it, the cinematography on it was amazing. It had it was a nice slow burn, creepy atmosphere that had no jump scares, and it just had some chilling moments and it's like the world didn't seem real to him.
Right.
And especially that moment where he goes out into the dining room and he sees the sheets that have like the blood stain right there. And then the people in the sheets turn and look at him. I was like, oh, that's a nice touch.
There was some excellent cinematography in the second one, and I loved the surrealistic nature. I'm all about cosmic horror and cosmic dread, and the pervasive sense of things of like terrifying things beyond your control. I'm a big Lovecraftian fan. I love the way that one played out, where it was as mental as it was physically scary, which is why it was strong. I felt it would have been better as the third one. I thought that would have been good because it would have allowed you kind of like a build. You would have gone like 1, 2 to go with the doppelganger one, go 2, and then go the third one, the cop one, then drop down to the Hereditary style one, and then lead to the climax where I'm not going to spoil it, but if this ending wasn't telegraphed for you in the first 10 minutes, I have no idea what movie you were fucking watching.
And this is the thing about the ending, and I think because you're 100% right, it's telegraphed, and like I said, we won't spoil it. But honestly, like it felt like the ending was just we didn't know what to do. Like it was just kind of like, oh, all right, we went through. It's like, hey, we have these ideas for 4 shorts. We want to put them together so they're in a feature film, and that's all great. Have somebody go and telling stories, cool. All right, well, we finished the 4 stories. What do we do now? And that's just purely what it felt like. It was just kind of, well, we got to end this somehow.
Sarcasm does agree with you. It says the second sequence from the kid was so surreal. I was kind of meh on all the rest because I really loved number 2 so much. I really enjoyed number 2 as well. I thought it was the strongest of the bunch. Hey, Dib is here. Good to see you, Dib, who is in lurk mode. Thanks for being here. Let me see here. Aaron Ray says Scare Us followed by the sequel about Hammer Themes murders Peen Us. Funny because ball peen. I gotcha. Let me see who else is. Casey Cooper says, "Don't go to the basement /attic/cemetery. Let's hide behind the chainsaws." Absolutely,
yeah,
definitely. And Ordinary Jeff says, "Leave the chain steamer trunk with the singing voices alone." Good life advice. It absolutely is. The one thing that I got, the only thing that I saw that was kind of missing was the opportunity for the doppelganger one, because it opens up. I felt very strong, isolated. Apparently, not really abandoned, but it's a closed gas station. And all the neon lights. I got a very Joe Bagos kind of feel to it. Like, I love that kind of cinematography. I felt it was going to go in that direction, but ultimately was too dark. There is too dark, and then there's not dark enough, and this one just hit on the too dark side. They could have brightened it up a little bit. They could have gone a little bit stronger in kind of the Bagos direction with that kind of lighting and cinematography. I felt would have worked better to its advantage, but nonetheless, I felt that was the missed opportunities, and that one was solely in the lighting aspect. It was an okay story, but we needed some more. And obviously with the ambiguous ending, but
yeah, agreed with that one, because when you have, I just call it the creature. When you have the creature like reveals itself in front of the car, I was like, oh, okay, this is like the moment I'm waiting for, and then I couldn't see it.
You can't see it, which is a bummer, which I thought was kind of like there was a bunch of missed opportunities all over the place. Little bits and pieces that kept making me want more. Sarcasm says Splinter did it first and better. Absolutely. Splinter was, an excellent example. There's the bad thing about it. We see these shorts, these little anthology pieces, and they make us think of other movies that did them better. So like the Doppelganger one, Splinter did it better. The Homecoming one, Hereditary did it better. The only thing, and obviously, and I think in the storage room, story, I honestly would, which was I think it was Night Hall. In Night Hall, obviously they took Blood Vessel, did the creature design better in that film, and I thought just you're in such a fantastic place. It's nice, it's tight, it's claustrophobic. Play to your strengths, not onto what's obviously in front of you. Just be like, utilize angles, really makes it, because everybody's been in a storage facility. They're narrow, they're tight. You have all of these doors. It could be creepy. Noise plays really, really weird in that. Play with in cinematography, play with your angles, play with the light. Let things, let the natural creepiness of that environment, especially after dark, do that well. What Cabinet of Curiosities did that extraordinarily well. Allowed the creepiness of the storage facility to play itself as it's kind of its own character in that first episode, in the first entry in Cabinet of Curiosities. So that one did it extremely well. So that's how you want to play that. Let your environment be a character.
Well, see, and this is the thing, was that you're right, because it had kind of this limited lighting thing, kind of this limited shot selection. That's why it kind of felt cheap. Like it didn't feel like poorly, like super poor quality in terms of shooting wise, but it felt like it was low on production value, because I kind of got tired of the storage unit.
Yeah.
Because like honestly, they actually probably did. They filmed that in probably 2 hallways in a corner. And like that was really about it before you get the stairwell scene. So it was just like I'm thinking they just didn't have the means to get a large variety of angles because of the limited space, limited lighting, and they just kind of had to work with what they got, which is that's what I kind of wish if they made it more suspenseful, like how we talked about leading up to her just opening and that's it, that could be interesting, because once she's running, you can only do so much when a character's running.
Right.
You really can't, because you have to showcase running. You can't go too tight, because then the camera's doing this and you can't see anything. Or you can't get wide enough just because of the space that you're in. So it really limits what you can do.
All in all, I have to agree with you. I agree with you. Untethered was the strongest of the bunch. Night Hall, The Resting, and Dead Ringer. Each one of them had all things going for it. But ultimately, I think the film is dragged down a little bit, just simply because you never, as a writer myself, you never, ever, ever, I never, ever want to telegraph my ending. And that's the thing that kicked me the most out of this one, was I was, within 10 minutes, I'd already sussed out what was going to happen in the end. It's like they set it up pretty decently, going through town. It's a dwindling little town, probably one of those dying little towns in, breadbasket America. And then all of a sudden we have this killer that's returned, Cutthroat is returned, and, there's bodies piling up. And then when you have, as a director, when you have your actor making certain choices, I mean, that's ultimately going to seal the fate. So I automatically knew I was already at the end 10 minutes into the movie, and that's problematic. Keep that ambiguous, and that was even worse. That makes all the moments that are supposed to be red herrings. Oh, I thought I locked the door. That makes all your red herring moments completely
just useless.
Just useless. It's like, because now it's a hat on a hat. It's kind of like, well, what? We already know. It's like, come on. It's like, oh, because now the character, now to us, the character is trying to sell it to the other characters. And I'm like, what are you doing?
and that's the thing. It was like, I hated that. I hated that serial killer backdrop. I honestly, I really did. I'm fine. I like anthology films. It is nice to showcase, because a lot of these were very well done and they're great. They're worth a watch just on their own. But I hate it was like, okay, well, now we got to wrap up the last part of it. It's just kind of like this. Could we just end at the 4th story and be like, cool, and then everybody goes home, end of movie?
Right.
Like, honestly, that would have been a better ending.
That was the damn shame of it. It was kind of a bummer, kind of a little bit of a letdown. I thought I'm always a sucker for anthologies. So Tony Regime brought up Southbound is one of the best horror anthologies ever. Southbound was fucking amazing. Everything about that one. I've shown it multiple times over in the Discord. I love showing that film because it is just perfection. Every single story and the framing narrative, the way it's designed, the fucking time loop and how each story feeds into the next, fucking brilliance. And the interesting is the second one in the accident sequence in Southbound. That's how you do that. That's how you build tension. That's how you really drive.
Because that's the one where they're like, it's the Australian one, and they're out like on the road, right? You have the creature.
Yeah, the guys who are in the truck and you see the creatures around. And then the one where the guy winds up with the girl, he hits the girl in the road, he wants to take her to the hospital, and he's listening to people on the phone walk him through, like trying to save her life, and it's all like, that is how you.
I remember that one. That was good.
Aaron Reese says, "Man, this must have been bad if JL's shitting all over it." There's too much. The problem is there's too many mistakes, and they're rookie mistakes. These are basic errors that unseasoned filmmakers just don't make. So I'm sitting, because you're sitting here watching, it was like, okay, I see why they did these things, or I see what limitations they were trying to overcome. But these are things that you said that you fix in planning when you're really like, this is our location. What do we need here? The good instincts of your DP, of your cameraman, of your director, of your actors themselves who know the spaces that they'll be playing in. Having those instincts is really, really important. And having, coming up with ideas. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to shoot this. How do we maximize this? The thing that killed me is that everything is so flat in the first one, in Night Hall. When you're in this, like, creepy, desolate storage facility, and the walls are like pus yellow, and you've got that constant glaring hum from the fluorescence, and then you have this, the lights are on timers and they go out, and then the way sound carries. Play with those. Use the light to really accent how grotesque the walls are, to really bring up the seediness and the decrepitness of it, and then the horrors that are hidden behind all these doors. Build that. Utilize your environment. And it just came out so flat because they refused to do that. Simple, basic mistakes that should have been caught in planning.
You're right, because the other three didn't feel like a budget limitation. Regardless of whether you like the story or not, there was no, or at the very least, it didn't feel that way, because even like in the fourth one, the house was very well decorated. Like, it's a very nice house. The art direction was very well with it. When you had him outside at night, despite the fact some stuff was hard to see, the way the gas station, the neon lights with the car and everything, it didn't feel like a limitation. And obviously with Untethered, it didn't feel like a limitation. And even these are simple stuff, because Untethered takes place entirely in the house.
In the house.
That's it. It's like a living room, a bedroom, a hallway, like a kitchen. And that's it. That's all you need. And that one came out like fantastic. That was the one I almost checked out. You got the Telegraph in the very beginning, and then I watched Night Hall, and I'm like, I think I'm going to check out. And then Untethered starts, and I'm just going like, you know what? Okay, all right, you got me. All right, yeah, you got me for 10 more minutes. Let's see where this goes. Nice. So at the very least, it's worth watching. It's a good movie. It's not like a complete waste of time or anything like some of the others that we've talked about. But the shorts themselves are at least worth a watch.
Definitely. Anthologies are always fun, and you can't go wrong with an anthology. Nice short little tidbits, really, really good stuff. This one will definitely remind you of feature films that did the ideas better. But all in all, it is an entertaining flick. And if the ending was not telegraphed for you, all the better. Most likely it was telegraphed for us because we've done this, coming up for this show alone, coming up almost 1,000 times. So, we've been there, done that. But the thing I want to ask, and Paracord Princess says, JL, please let us know when you screen other movies. I put an announcement in the Discord every time I show a movie over there. So if I have the time and something comes across my table, I will do I'll show a feature. I'll do a double feature over there in the Discord. The link for the Discord is in the description. You can come over and watch with us anytime, but I will always put out an announcement before I go live. So look for those announcements. It's like, boom, this will be showing in the theater at this specific time, and then we'll run with it. I think the last one we did an outdoorsy. We did like a camping horror. So we did Josh Stewart's The Hunted and then Devil in the Dark. And so we did that double feature last time. So one was, I think, it was like one was like a ghost story, a camping ghost story, and the other one was a Wendigo horror. So, all right, but I want to ask the audience concerning Scare Us, this anthology. Obviously, multiple different stories. You've got Night Hall, you've got Dead Ringer, you've got Untethered, and then you've got The Resting. So let us know down in the comments below or at weekinhorror@gmail.com. What do you think was the best story in the anthology Scare Us? Or which one was your favorite? Let us know. Comments below. Of course, here in the live chat or at weekinhorror@gmail.com. All right. Eugene, take us across the pond for our next one.
This is a disappointing one.
This is the dip.
This is a dip right here. Next we got Wakewood, which was released June 28, 2011. Roll it.
People shouldn't hurt animals, should they?
No, they shouldn't.
Animals shouldn't hurt people either.
Well, that's kind of different.
What goes on in Wakewood is not for everyone. But what goes on?
I can bring your daughter back to life for a short time, so you can see her, hold her again, and say goodbye properly.
Will she be normal?
Her heart will beat, her breath will breathe, and she'll remember the time she had with you.
But it's not so simple, is it?
The ritual of the return binds you to Wakewood.
Oh, my baby. Oh, my baby.
Is this for real?
Alice, are you a normal little girl?
Why don't you look at me?
She's not right. You must put Alice back in the ground where she belongs.
Do it now.
She's fine. She's our little girl.
You have to obey the rules, Patrick. There's something amiss. Don't look at her. Look away! Look away! Look away!
What the hell have we done?
Back to the trees and lie among the roots. Back to the trees and lie among the roots!
You were going to leave me.
I was scared.
Are you still scared? Dad, am I dead?
So that is Wakewood, directed by David Keating, starring Timothy Spall, Aidan Gillian, Eva Burstone, Ella Connolly, Ruth McCabe, and Amelia Crowley. And basically, Pet Sematary is about trying to raise her daughter back from the dead after she gets mauled to death by a dog, and they have to follow these rules of a ritual to have her for X amount of days and so forth and so forth. And obviously things kind of go wrong and all sorts of kind of stuff. Honestly, it felt like Pet Sematary met the Wicker Man. Like,
pretty much.
That's just it in a nutshell. Like, it didn't bring anything new. It didn't bring anything sarcasm. Sarcasm. I didn't even read your comment yet. And I mean, great minds think alike. You know, Pet Sematary meets the Wicker Man. That's it. Honestly, that's exactly what it is. It is just kind of, the characters weren't fleshed out enough to really appreciate like the way the Pet Sematary. Of course, to clarify, I'm talking about the original Pet Sematary in 1980s, not the 2000 whatever one. The characters weren't fleshed out enough. So what happens is like you don't care. That's one of the biggest things. It's like you don't care about them, because as soon as Timothy Spall starts saying the rules, You can't step outside the town. You only get it. They have to return to the woods. You know, every single world's going to get broken. Right. Every single one is going to get broken. And of course, every single world does get broken. And you have these consequences that happen. But honestly, I think anytime you do a film that's about bringing your son or daughter back from the grave, especially like rising up from the grave, Pet Sematary has already done it. It just has, and that's a hard movie to beat.
The concept of raising people from the dead for whatever reason, always, a classic horror trope of the perils of doing so or bringing life back, and is that life changed? Sarcasm says all this movie was missing is sometimes dead is better, and yes, it kind of was missing. It was missing the Fred Gwynn character, or the harbinger of what's to come. But yeah, my biggest issue on this one is like. So the two biggest issues that I have with this one, I love Irish horror films. I love foreign horror, but being born and raised in the States, we have an idea of what is horror here. But I love foreign horror myself, whether it's across the pond in England or Ireland, or doesn't matter, across the world. There's a sensibility for horror outside of the United States that I think that we sometimes lack. So I went in kind of like excited about this. I was like, it's got Aidan Gillen in it. It's got Timothy Spall. One of my favorite characters. Timothy Spall was in a British horror film called Heartless, one of my all-time favorite horror films. A real fucking gut punch of a horror film. And Timothy Spall brings the goods. Unfortunately, this is kind of an instance where he's brought in just for name recognition alone. It's like, we're going to bring Timothy Spall in to give the gravitas to this pagan group, this leader of this pagan group that can do that can perform this ritual. The problem is that you're shooting in Ireland, and yes, you are shooting in Wakewood. And the idea of it is that if they do this thing to bring their daughter back and have 3 days with her, like, yeah, you've taken ostensibly what Ireland is a beautiful and widespread and very gorgeous country to look at, and you're taking this kind of like wide open country that the spanning beautiful vistas of Ireland, and you are making it claustrophobic. You are condensing it. You can't leave this one spot. You need to play with that as an element in and of itself. The idea that you are now claustrophobic because you're now rendered, immobile. You can't leave this town once you've committed this act. Play with that trope. Play with that increasing paranoia. Play with the idea that this family is surrounded by these pagans that are doing these things out in the wood, that they're bringing people back from the dead for 3 days, before they leave. There are so many opportunities in this movie that do not get utilized in favor for the spectacle of the kills, the throwaway characters. That's why nobody's developed. And then, of course, Timothy Spall's gravity that he brings to this, and some of the gory, nasty, because pagan rituals are always kind of like bodily fluids and all kinds of nastiness. But it's at times it's too dark. At times, they don't explore enough. There's so many missed opportunities in trying to basically tell what Pet Sematary already did. Instead of trying to take the idea and make it something interesting and new, or even give a different explanation as to why this is happening. Like in Pet Sematary, it was because the ground itself had gone bad. Because sometimes that happens. Is that sometimes what the Native Americans believed is that they would stop burying their dead in this one particular area because an evil spirit had come there and had infested it. In Pet Sematary, it was the Wendigo. That's what happened there. The Wendigo took root in that area, and that's why their dead were coming back to life and becoming zombies. So, but there's no explanation here. We just have a pagan ritual, and no explanation as to what God is behind this. No explanation as to what she are behind this. All we have is just this boom, 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 paint by numbers resurrection, Irish resurrection flick that turns into a fucking slasher.
Yeah, because then all of a sudden she gets like super strength and it was like a fucking ninja kind of thing.
It was weird. It's like she starts out okay because the minute he lays down, well, they can't have been dead for longer than a year. Well, and then they're like discussing it. Should we tell him? Well, yeah, you're raising the fucking dead. The rules should matter. It's like, no, we're actively going to lie to these people and tell them, no, You know, what we want is more important than this. So they bring her back. She's been dead over a year. And that's why she comes back wrong and then starts murdering everybody and like mutilating animals and shit, which could have been a real interesting meditation on grief, loss, and the shortcuts we take to get around that pain. A true character analysis in the wake of eschewing the new world, the contemporary world, with like the classic, you know, the pagan world of antiquity, and how these things blend together and how we reconcile these things. No, instead we get, you know, the Wicker Man, that, you know, much darker, a poorly lit Wicker Man that descends into a Pet Sematary slasher film. With, you know,
just to clarify, we are talking about the Nicolas Cage Wicker Man.
Yeah, the Nicolas Cage one. Yes, absolutely. You cannot explore death without strong characterization, because when we lose people, we care because we care about the people. That's an emotional thing. You're talking to the story talks to the primal fear that we have in us, the loss of our loved ones, the loss of ourselves, the oblivion of death. And if you don't give a shit, even if it's a little girl being like in the opening of this movie, a little girl being torn apart by a dog, out of her own. Honestly, you know, why anybody would allow a child to go and mess with a dog, I have no idea. Just silly. Or let like a fucking 6-year-old, like a 7-year-old, like walk to school by herself, you know. But nonetheless, you know, mistakes are made like in that respect. But in anything, we have to give a damn. And the way it's edited and the way it's shot, we don't get the opportunity to start to care about anybody, because every time there's a major shift and they happen quickly, we are constantly moved to another position where we have to start again in developing that foundation with the characters, because we immediately go from happy family and within 5 minutes we're grieving family, then we're moving to a new place family to run away from our problems, then we're like, you know, we're like, now we're not happy here, and we can't overcome our grief. And now all of a sudden there's a supernatural ritual in place. We keep shifting from place to place to place to place. The audience can't catch up. It's like,
You can't. It doesn't let time for it to develop. And honestly, what would have been a better movie is if you explore the dilemma of going through, instead of this whole action sequence and this whole thing, and it's like they're running around and they're trying to get the scale. Cut all that stuff out, and you can start with the girl dying, the little girl dying, and then you have the couple move, and then if you spend the film dealing with their grief and dealing with the fact, should we lie to these people, and explore what grief does, and then you can end on they decide to go through it and they raise her back, and then just cut and just leave the rest of the imagination. You cut all the action stuff you don't need, but that way that gives you a chance to really dive into that characterization and that moral dilemma, because you can still have the townspeople, they can give warnings and things like, oh, has she been dead more than a year? And then they can have that conversation like, should we lie to them? What could affect that happen? And have them kind of turmoil over that decision, and they can decide at the end, it's like, you know what? I miss him. Let's go ahead and lie. We will accept whatever consequences are there. And then you just leave, and then it can end bringing her back, and then you just leave everything else to the imagination. That would have been a better movie. And that way you wouldn't compare with Pet Sematary either.
And I think a non-linear storytelling here would have been really, really good. The revelation as to like how the little girl died and what were the circumstances of her death, leading up to that, it being revealed kind of like non-linearly in flashback, I thought would have been a lot stronger for developing those emotions that we as the audience need to give a shit about these parents and to give a shit about their plight. But the linear storytelling gets, we jump from section to section so quickly. It's just unnecessary. And we lose all these opportunities to do really, really interesting shit. And the actors, these very talented actors, if you look at their filmographies, especially Timothy Spall and Aidan Gillen, you look at their filmographies, they never get the opportunity to really do anything, which is a damn shame, because fucking, if you want to know like talent wise, okay, Aidan Gillen was fucking Littlefinger on Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I mean, easily one of the best characters that people love to hate. One of the best villains of that show.
And he was also amazing on Peaky Blinders as well. The dude is like dripping with talent and no opportunity to show any of it here, which is, I fucking hate when a movie does not give a talented actor the opportunity to explore and play. If you're going to bring these people in, bring an individual of that caliber in, let them read the script, let them bring ideas, let them play in the part, let them seek out where the character can go, where the character can grow, where the arc is going to be, and let them run with that. Don't pigeonhole them to a paint by numbers, because they're never really going to get invested. They're going to give a strong performance. It's always going to be strong just by sheer virtue of talent, but you're never going to get the most, which is what you're paying for.
Yeah, I mean, and that is because even I think Game of Thrones is already on at this point with Aidan Gillian, and the thing is I blame the director. Hands down, I blame the director, because you're right. A nonlinear storytelling would have been more interesting, and that way we can reveal more about their past when we want to reveal, when it helps the story progress in a certain way, versus this just boom, 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 straightforward. And maybe it could have been, maybe it was pitched to them better. Maybe I think Game of Thrones was still new at the time, so maybe they started trying to look for something to branch out. But this movie could have been better. And Tony Regime, Pet Sematary crossed with the Antichrist.
He wants Pet Sematary crossed the Antichrist with fucking with Lars von Trier's Antichrist. That'd be a fucked up movie.
That would be a fucked up movie, and I would watch the shit out of it.
I would watch the fuck out of that one. Pet Sematary meets Von Trier's Antichrist. Yes. I would watch it at heartbeat. Charlotte Gainsbourg and Willem Dafoe. Fuck yeah.
Sign me up for that.
That's fucking insane. That would be fucking crazy. But yeah, that was just, I wanted so much to love this because there's so many elements that it had going for it. Unfortunately, it just never gets the opportunity for these fine actors. It's an opportunity to just do a movie that comes along. It's like, okay, it's a paycheck. It's, it's nearby, it's local, so we can just do a quick local film and we can just knock it out and get a paycheck. I don't like those because I feel it's a waste of their talent, that they could have done this with B actors and gotten the exact same result. Utilizing solid talent just for the name recognition is really obnoxious to me. I hate that marketing tactic. I've never been a fan of that because to me it's false advertising. It's like, I want this, but then I'm going to get this, which is, it just really just annoys the shit out of me. I wish we got more.
It really does, because even Aiden's scene in Dark Knight Rises was still better. Even the little short amount that he was on the plane was still incredible. Like, you still get a sense of the character who he is more than you do in this entire film.
Oh, they'll see when he's chucking people out the fucking why would he shoot a man after throwing him? Why would he shoot a man? Why would he threaten to shoot a man before throwing him out of an airplane? I totally forgot that was him. I totally his face. See,
if I take this off, will it kill you? It would be extremely painful for you.
It would be extremely painful for you. For you. Oh, I fucking love it. Yeah, Tom Hardy, legend. And the two of them got to work together again on Peaky Blinders, which is amazing. So, but yeah, a whole lot of talent, didn't go anywhere. Story could have been so much better. I expected a lot more. But you know, it was they could have had all they had to do was, and that's what really annoys. They could have just reached out and grabbed it. It was fucking there for the taking, and they could have but they just didn't. And that's why sometimes you just gotta have the balls to take that risk and go in the direction that you need to go. Just be like, you feel it. I know my instincts were screaming at me to do this, and I'm like, if I was behind that camera, I'd be like, yeah, go in this direction. You know that director's kind of either that director was like, nope, not listening to my instincts. I'm not here to do work. I'm just here to work. No art whatsoever. Or that dude was sitting in that director's chair like a dog shitting peach seeds. So like that. I really wish I could do this, but I really don't know. No, I think I'll just be safe. I'll just be safe. I don't want to screw anything up. So.
Yeah. And honestly, I think what it is either safe or you have somebody. Who directed it again?
That was David Keating.
Yeah, David Keating. I mean, I haven't looked very much in his filmography. I don't know if he's done a lot before or a lot since. He could have been somebody who's like new, and it's like, hey, it's the first chance you get. You're working with some people that you've kind of heard of before, and just really didn't take control of it. Or there's a whole number of reasons, but I blame the director for this one.
Yeah, I have to do that. But this one falls squarely on the director. They just the missed opportunities. Ordinary Jeff would like to say, I was born into darkness, molded by it. I didn't see the light until I was already a man.
By the time I saw the light, it was blinding.
Oh, fucking Bane. You can do Bane all day. Such a shame. Such a damn shame. I love me some pagan horror. I really fucking do. I love movies like Hereditary. I love like Midsummer. I love pagan horror because pagan rituals and pagan belief systems are so deep and so rich, and there is so much to play with from a narrative perspective to really get into it. I enjoy it. The rituals. Here's my curiosity. Let me ask you this before we go. I'll ask the live. I want to you look at the ritual to bring someone back, right? This is what bothered me. This is really bugged me. So they're going through the ritual to bring this little girl back, right? And I'm like, okay, so there's a ritual to bring somebody back. Fantastic. But it requires something of hers, her necklace, and they use her finger bone because they have to go grave robbing. Mm-hmm. Then it requires the body of another person who's recently deceased. Then they have to smash that body up. Then they have to sever the spinal cord. Then they have to encase it in this peat moss. Then they have to say all these words. Then they have to light it on fire. I was like, how did the pagans figure this ritual out? How many trial and error took place before they finally got? I was like, this is really, really fucking involved.
This is very specific.
There's very specific steps at specific, not only the steps, but the timing has to be we have to do it at this time, at this like this, and then and don't look at it. When I set it on fire, don't look at the lights. Everybody has to turn and look avert their eyes. How do they know to do that? It's so many. They're so in depth. It was I'm sitting here going who the fuck figured this out? I imagine pagan, ancient pagan people trying to feel we want to bring back the dead. How do we do this? Let's just start doing shit, and eventually we'll figure it out. It's wow. And then Rodent No Same says so many side quests.
It only took them 700 tries to get it right.
Exactly. And I was it was. And Sir Cap says, I would, however, really like to have one of those Irish abacuses. See, an explanation of the abacus as well. How does that factor into this? When he's like, tell me about your daughter, and he's doing all these cool things like this. Tell me how that works. And if it's fucking magic, how do they not know? How did the abacus not reveal that they were lying? What's going on here? Maybe it's a free will thing, but they never explore that.
The abacus looks cool. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many cool things. So many things they could have gone. I'm bummed that they didn't. So.
But what I would like to ask the audience is this. Obviously, this movie's from Ireland. We've talked about a lot of other countries. What is the best country for horror? When we talk about, we said Ireland, we have England, we have some French, we have Japanese, Korean. What is the best country for horror films? Let us know in the chat below or shoot us an email at weekinhorror@gmail.com.
Just off the top of my head, I'm going to have to say, for me, Japan.
Japan was the first one that came to mind.
I think Japan does the horror the best. Plothole says Siberia, which I don't know what movies he's fucking watching. Travis Brown says Japan. Yes, Sarcasm also says Japan as well. Javer says, you know how people today make up batshit crazy theories for how things work? Replace that modern crazy person with an ancient shaman. Totally possible.
Yep.
And Rodent No Last Name says druidic trial and error. Let's try peeing on it before spinning the gourd. It's okay, let's just give that a shot.
That didn't work, so pee on it after spinning the gourd.
Oh, fuck. Maybe during the spinning? I don't fucking know. It was so involved. There's so many steps, and it's so involved. And I'm like, what process led to us figuring this out? It's I was like, holy shit. Usually it's just do X, Y, Z. Resurrection, don't break rules. But no, there was you could write a fucking manual as to this thing. There were multiple people involved as far as doing this. They had to build a contraption to specifically do a thing that needs to be done in this ritual, like the crushing device. It's like, we built this thing because normally we'd have to do this, and that's way too hard. So we built this device to do it for us. What?
How often are y'all doing this?
Yes.
Yeah, we're like, listen, we need to be way more efficient at this. So like, we started building contraptions, and it's like, even like a book, like the gods gave us a book to show us or something, but no, they just know it.
Right. Oh, let me see. I see plot holes in there has been keeping it down. I see Angel Rivera's here. Good to see Angel Rivera. Freight Edges popped in. Freight Edges says Australia. Hello, everyone. Just got back from an interview for work placement. Oh, very cool. Awesome. Rocking it in Australia. Fantastic. Rodin last name says Murica. Murica does the best horror. Tony Regime says Japanese horror has a quality that other countries lack. Agreed. Plot hole says, in all honesty, Korea has been killing it lately. They have been.
They
Korea's
really have.
stepped their game. They have. Javier Hara is here. Good to see you. Javier says, hey, guys, not a country, but a planet, Mars. One day we will get Mars horror. One day. And it will not be silly Gary Sinise and Tim Robbins horror films.
No.
I'm sorry. I'm digging on Red Planet. So
I was about to dig on John Carpenter's Ghost of Mars.
Ghost of Mars. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, Ghost of Mars. I should have gone with that one. But I love Carpenter.
But that, they all can't be great.
They all can't be great. This is true.
Yeah.
This is true. All right. Well, we've got one more to talk about tonight. This is going to be kind of a quick one. Let's see here. Released June 29th, 2018. We have the action horror film, The Domestics. Let's check out this trailer.
It started just like any other day. Then everything we thought we knew was gone. The lucky ones were dead in seconds. And when the country crumbled, we divided ourselves into tribes. Gamblers, sheets, plowboys, cherries, nailers, and us, the domestics.
So you're really doing this?
Yep. You know, it's probably the stupidest thing I've ever done.
You get one flat tire, you're dead.
Miss Milwaukee, this is Eagle. Over. Mom, I just wanted to let you know that we're on our way.
We set out across 200 miles, through 8 gang territories.
We should stay off the roads. Crash here for the night.
You think it's safe?
Find out.
Hold it. All I'm looking for was a handshake. Go. My wife and I would like to invite you both over for dinner. What? Oh, sorry, late lunch. Good people didn't survive. We did.
All right, so we have The Domestics, post-apocalyptic action horror film directed by Mike P. Nelson, written by Mike P. Nelson, starring Taylor Hetchlin, Kate Bosworth, the rest in peace Lance Reddick, Sonoya Mizuno, and Dana Gurrier, and a cameo by David Dasmalkian, who is, I love the fact that his star is rising thanks to the MCU because he's such a talented actor. The film follows a couple played by Kate and Tyler, who have decided to travel cross-country in the post-apocalypse to get back to her parents' house. And as usual, it's so forced. It's kind of a bummer. We have the couple who is experiencing difficulties in the relationship. They look like they're splitting apart, and this is the opportunity to try and salvage their marriage by making this road trip across the territory of multiple gangs to get her back to her parents because she's worried about them. And of course, shit gets shit gets kind of real. There's some good moments.
There's a lot of action and death in it. Yeah,
there's definitely a lot of action in this one. Freight Edge says, I haven't seen this, but is this a post-apocalypse version of 1979 movie The Warriors? Kind of. There you can see some influences of The Warriors in there. Plottle says this is one of those trailers that's way too long. The trailer's a little on the long side. Agreed.
And it gives away a lot.
It does give away a lot.
It is a lot.
My big, so it is definitely an immersive film. I like road trip films. Road trip films are always cool because you get to see different areas. It allows the crew to shoot in different places. And kind of like, I love this. I just love scenic stuff. So I love cross country films. The Hitchers especially, comes to mind as well. Going through the back roads of mid-America, it allows for a lot of production value. So I enjoyed that. It's an immersive film. It creates a kind of interesting post-apocalyptic environment that doesn't spend too much time saying why it happened or what's going on, just that our government did some shit and now everything fucking sucks.
It never explains the planes at all. It's the planes, a bunch of people die, that's it.
Yeah. Poison, toxins got pumped into the air, most everybody died, but the immune survived, and now we're all in a bunch of gangs. There are a lot of fun moments, a lot of really, really strong action, and some good, tense opportunities. But the one thing that I can't fucking stand is the forced relationship troubles. Why do we always have to have a couple that's having problems, especially in the post-apocalypse? It's the one thing that kept drawing me out of it, is like when they fall into old habits of needling each other over past pre-apocalypse shit. I never get that. As a writer, it's illogical because you're in the post-apocalypse, worrying about jobs, worrying about who brought in the money, who made the bacon. All of that shit is fucking inconsequential at this point. It's now a survival effort to get from point A to point B.
And the thing is, you're right, and because you could use that if you followed right as the apocalypse was happening, because then it's new and it's fresh, like the planes can fly over, and then there's okay, now you have this huge shift, and now everybody's worried about survival, and you start thinking, well, do I want to go through and survive with this person? That's something that you can explore. But at this point, the government's already crumbled. You have all these gangs that are organized, that have mapped out territories, that have all this other kinds of stuff. These things are organized, and these things take time to organize. So you're gonna share the apocalypse with somebody for a couple of years, and then go, oh, well, let's go ahead and bring up some old stuff. No, that time is gone. That time has passed. And that's the one thing that I don't understand about this trip, is because, okay, well, we're going to go try to find my parents to help us out. Why go
to check on them? Because at the beginning of the film, you've got exposition neighbor comes by and wants to so why are you doing this trip? It's going to be really dangerous, but all the gangs out there. Are you sure this is really what you want? Yada, yada, yada. So thank you, exposition neighbor, for explaining what's going to be happening with for getting the audience set. So it
was something. It could have used a better premise. I love post-apocalyptic films. I do, because I love post-apocalyptic films because there are no rules because the civilization's gone. But if they did something more like, where we are is no longer safe, so now I have to make this journey to go to the parents' house. Or if it was okay, they got a message saying that where the parents are is breaking apart and falling apart, and now that they're sitting there, they're on their own. So now it's a sudden urgency that we can try to save them. I can get behind something like that, but just hey, we're going to try to fix our marriage.
Right. It's odd. And Johnny O brings up it's an easy trope to use in order to create drama and tension, but you can do that in a better way. And movies like The Road did that in a better way. That's a better way to show, because the drama that was going on was exacerbated. The drama that was going on prior to the apocalypse was exacerbated by the apocalypse, and the onset of the apocalypse is what led to them diverging and led to Viggo Mortensen's character, the man, being in the position that he was in. So the drama that led to that characterization shift, that's what's important. So it could have been their marriage was failing, and she left ahead to go to her parents because they stopped responding to the radio, and he went after her. That would have made more sense, and maybe caught up with her at the Gamblers, which I thought would have made an even better sequence, because then it's like, oh, you're the husband who came looking for her. Oh, and then that makes for something really compelling and really strong there. I think that would have been better, because now it's not just a road trip, it's also a rescue mission, which puts more emphasis on him to survive and get to her. Once he realizes, it's like, shit, maybe he. I like the way that goes better. The forced relationship thing, it's all it does. All it's intended to do is set up certain plot points so they can deliver. Oh, they're reconciling, and their reconciliation puts them in a weakened position so that we can get to the next point where the Gamblers get them. And then each one is just a telegraph setup to the next. It's cheap and it's easy to write, but it's disingenuous.
That's the thing is it's cheap, because when you have that scene with the Gamblers where they're forcing to hold the guns at each other, if they were a true loving couple, think of like the couples in movies that are like the epitome. For example, like take Princess Bride, for example, right? And then you have Buttercup and you have Carrie Elves' character. Then you put them in that situation with the guns, and they're like forced to like pull the trigger at each other. That can be a heartbreaking, edge of your seat moment, because like, oh, these two love each other so much. What's gonna happen? Instead of like, man, they've just been fighting, they've been at each other's throat. She might just shoot him just to get rid of them.
It's true. So I there were some missed opportunities, but I will give it this: in the violence, in the death, and in the final climactic suburbs battleground, I've never seen a better use of the suburbs ever in my life. I just wish because I don't like the sterility of the suburbs myself. I just don't. Chaos in the suburbs, I just kind of dig, Purge style. And I loved the final climactic battle sequence in this. But the big thing, I mean, obviously the action set pieces were absolutely amazing. The setup for and what really got me, I both loved it and disliked for what it did. It was the setup of the Gamblers. The Gamblers we see the most of. We see their headquarters. We see what they do. We get a sense of their way of life. And that's awesome. But the problem was we saw so much of them. I wanted to see more of the other gangs. I wanted to see more of the Sheets. I wanted to see more of the man-hating Cherries. I wanted to see more. Why are the Nailers called the Nailers? Why, we see why the Plowboys are called the Plowboys, because they have a giant plow. Those giant plows in order to clear the streets. We get a sense of that, but I wanted to explore that. Why are they this way? Why are they this way? What's going on? They map it out. They're going to go through the territories of like everybody. So why didn't we explore that? But I do love the idea of them going through the territory and pissing off each gang as they go through it until everybody converges. That's an excellent one. It's like it felt very The Raid, where we got to get all the way to where we got to fight our way all the way up to the top, and then everything converges all at once in the big throwdown. I like that. Just like, I wanted everybody to show up at the end and be like, but I wanted more. There were so many things that they wasted energy on that we could have done more interesting and more compelling things with in order to make it a bit more of we can invest ourselves stronger in the film.
The feeling I get from this film is like the original Purge movie, where it's like okay, you have this real interesting concept, we have this really interesting world, but then we're going to focus on this one small aspect, and it's just Ethan Hawke's house. And the rest of the film just kind of takes place there. And it's like, well, I wanted more. That's why personally I like Purge 2 and 3 better than the first one, because we get to see more of what's going on. I'm more invested in like what happened in between the chemicals to form these gangs. How do these gangs interact with each other? How are these territories carved out? Because these gangs didn't come out of we're just there one day. For example, like how did the Sheets get their names? How did you have the Gamblers? What built this tribal society that we have now. And that could have been a really interesting point to kind of dive into more than just a troubled couple.
Absolutely. And I will say this, the one thing I really, really enjoyed, because almost every post-apocalyptic film I've watched, one of the best elements is the idea that radio still works. And the crazy owl on the radio providing the exposition as we go through, that is an excellent slide. And I love that. And I did like the way the film ends with the whole like, hey, all you gangs that are listening out there, because essentially, I guess radio in the post-apocalypse is amazing because there's no FCC. You can say whatever the fuck you want. You can play whatever songs you want. I love that. Why satellites still work when nobody else has grid power, I have no idea. But apparently he can still broadcast and everybody can listen to him. And I love the idea that there's somebody out there doing that, but I love that ending when he's like, hey, all you gangs out there, there's this couple that's traveling across country. Stay the fuck out of their way because they will fucking kill you. I like that. There's good, strong moments that are a lot of fun, and I got to hand it to Lance Reddick. Who unfortunately I love watching Lance Reddick. I love watching I've loved him, everything he's ever done. But when Lance Reddick comes up to you smiling, hey, gonna shake your hands like, hey, good to meet you. Don't trust that. No. I knew that was bad from the start. The people walk up in the post-apocalypse with their hand out. It's like, no one's
that friendly. No, in an apocalyptic wasteland, no one is going to be friendly.
Oh, I was kind of like, yeah, I think that's and of course, it turns out, it's like, do you see any cows around here? Do you see any? What do you think?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's all good. It's like, oof.
No, he didn't look like Nick Offerman in The Last of Us. That kind of setup.
Alan M. Schmitz was the voice of Crazy Al. He did a very Wolfman Jack, very Wolfman Jack. I really loved the callback to that, and the music selection was really, really strong. Overall, an enjoyable film. Lots of fun. Just some things I think that they could have done better, but that's just my opinion. This was going to come down to opinion. I think is that the way it's shot is great. The action set pieces are fantastic. The gambling sequence was extremely well done. I just wish we had more exploration of the world building of the world itself. Really good world building makes post-apocalypse really interesting. Which is why I love The Road so much, because we not only got the relationship between the man and the boy, but we got an idea of what things are like in the world and how people got there. So,
and that's a big thing because you can have so much creative freedom and how you even want to go. Yeah. And what I'm about to say, I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for, and I don't care. You can by all means and shit on it all you want, but that's why, like, growing up, I was a fan of The Postman. Because despite however you feel about that movie, it does build a world.
It does. It builds an excellent world. And I will say, for all of Kevin Costner's missteps, Will Patton brought the fucking noise in that movie.
He did.
Will Patton was amazing. I loved his character throughout that. I like that idea. And plus, there's a lot of really, really good moments. Like, if only wars could be fought by the assholes who started them. It's like, that's a novel approach?
I was like, that's a great line.
That's a great line. Wouldn't it be great if wars could be fought by the assholes who started them? It's like, and I like that. I like that idea. It's like my little shipping clerk, the copy machine salesman, referencing to what we did back in the past. There were so many good moments. And Will Patton brought the noise. But there are ways to do post-apocalypse. This one had a lot of strong moments in it. I did enjoy the domestics. There were just some missteps, I think, that could have been done better. But the action pieces and the suburb shootout and the gamblers sequence were both really, really fucking good. Both really good stuff. And I thought were well shot, well constructed, and pretty harrowing because, you knew it was fucking serious when they drilled their hands into those fucking posts.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, it's they're dead serious about what's happening here. I was like, yeah, it's fucked up. I just wanted to know more about the sheets and the cherries. I want to know more about them. That's what I wanted to know. I wanted to get more details.
Yeah, I said, well, world building. Maybe this would have been a better series. like maybe an 8-part series or something like that, and they can get stuck and have to kind of go through, and they spend more time with the gangs, and they can kind of explore that and explore the relationships between how the gangs carved out their territories, and maybe some gangs work together, maybe some gangs fight each other, they're at war, or so forth and so forth. It just would have been interesting.
Yep. Oh man. Interesting stuff. So I want to ask the audience. The thing I want to ask the audience about is, given what was set up in the film, JL wants more sheet. Damn right, Joshua Lee. Good to see you, bud. I do want more sheet. I do. So given the setup of the movie, I want to ask the audience. I want to ask you guys, and let us know in the live chat or, of course, in the comments below. If you were in the domestics, which gang would you join? Obviously, the girls have the option of joining any gang, but they could also join the cherries. But all you guys out there could join a bunch of other ones. Would you be a gambler? Would you be a nailer? Well, I don't even know why they call themselves that. Would you be a sheet? Would you be a plowboy? Let us know. Or would you be a domestic? Let us know down in the comments below, or of course at weekinhorror@gmail.com. Which gang would you find yourself in if you were in the domestics? All right. So, Eugene, it is about that time. You know what time it is.
It's trivia time.
I'm never not going to get tired of that.
I love it so much.
I'm never going to get tired of that. So it is trivia time. So as usual, what everybody wants to, what everybody's waiting for, we have the opportunity to win a special item from the Week in Horror store. The link for the store is down in the description. The first person to get the correct answer in the live chat, and it would probably help me if I actually pulled up the fucking live chat, which I am doing right now. So the first person to get the correct answer in the live chat wins a special item from the Week in Horror store. Eugene, take it away.
Get those Google fingers ready. The question is, Wakewood was the first theatrical release from what genre production company in 30 years? Wakewood was the first theatrical release from what genre production company in 30 years? The first one to comment below will win an item from the Week in Horror store. Bam! Already!
Yeah,
Angel Rivera. And that is Hammer Productions.
That is correct. Angel Rivera. Fantastic. So, yes, Hammer Films. Hammer Films had not put out a theatrical release in I think it was just shy of 30 years. And then they started to get back into it. They did a web release. And then this Wakewood was the first theatrical release from Hammer Films in 30 years, which is probably why you saw in the trailer, it was Hammer Films Wakewood. Because it was Hammer was back. So yes, Wakewood was their return to theaters. Congratulations, Angel Rivera. We will get that printed up and shipped to you ASAP. Well done. All right. Well, you know what that means. That is the end of the show. That's going to close out another episode of the Week in Horror podcast. We want to thank you all so much for joining us. We hope you truly enjoyed the show. And if you did, smash those like and subscribe buttons and be sure to hit that bell so you never miss a future episode. Join us next week when we look back at the Poe-inspired Italian horror Nightmare Castle, the British camping terror Deadwood, the Karloff and Lugosi classic The Raven, and the hidden horrors of ancient Egypt in Prisoners of the Sun. Be sure to check out Josh Olsen's store at badsamurai.store. He does all the awesome artwork you see splattered all over our merch, which you can find over at Teespring. For more from Week in Horror, check out all the bloody links that are down in the description. Follow us on all the socials for the Daily Splatter, your daily horror recommendation. Join our Discord for watch parties, big announcements, and all kinds of horror shenanigans like the premiere of the films that we produce. And support the show through our PayPal link or through our Patreon. Join the higher tiers for early content access and behind-the-scenes fun with the crew, like our special guest judges on the Bloodbath debates, or even just support the show for $1 a month, like many of the people in the banner down below do. $1 a month. What are you waiting for? Join us. As always, thank you all for being the greatest audience a horror film podcast could have. I am JL.
And I'm Eugene.
We will see you all next week. And as always, stay scared.
You left Angel Rivera